Residential Tech Talk, Residential Tech.
Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. In this episode, I'm joined by Jon Robbins, the Executive Director of the Home Technology Specialists of America, HTSA. They're a consumer electronics buying group that in recent years has become one of the most progressive leadership organizations in the residential tech integration business. Although he's too modest to take credit, it was Jon's leadership and vision that pushed the group into new technology categories that the rest of the industry and media embraced later on. Hey, Jon, thanks for joining me today. How are you holding up with this crazy world of Zoom that we're living in these days?
Well, I will tell you, I have sampled, Jeremy, a few of the different virtual meeting sites, and I used to use GoToMeeting regularly, and I will tell you, I'm kind of converting over to Zoom because it seems to be a little more user friendly and a little bit less kludgy. So I'm becoming an expert on what are the best virtual meeting sites and platforms.
I was listening to somebody else's podcast the other day, and they're like, "What happened to Skype in this whole thing? Like, how was it that Zoom zoomed in and became like the status quo for everyone all of a sudden?" It's crazy.
Well, you know what it is? I think I found that, number one, Zoom's been really good if you've got a good camera, of which I do not, by the way. My camera sucks. But I will tell you that on my computer, I will tell you that the new iPhones, the cameras on them are spectacular. And by the way, the one I'm looking at of you right now is pretty good. So there's all kinds of little things, nuances to some of these platforms that I'm learning about. So
Absolutely.
We have been, I will tell you, at HTSA, we have been living on Zooms for the last 4 to 5 weeks, obviously. And we're probably accounting for, between Tom, Keith, and myself, probably 8 to 10 hours a day
Wow.
that we're putting on Zoom.
So are you getting outside and getting some fresh air at all during the day?
I am. When the weather's nice. You can't go to the gym, obviously, and I refuse to work out in the garage with my wife because she'll make me feel like an idiot. But I've been able to get outside and do some pretty brisk walks when fortunately, the weather's starting to break, and it's a good time to try to get some exercise in, and I say a whole lot of prayers while I'm doing my brisk walk. So it's definitely different times, and you're thankful for different things.
So while you're out there, are you in an area that has a lot of people, or are you pretty rural?
Well, it's interesting. We live at the Jersey Shore, so during the winter and early spring, it's pretty sparsely populated. By Memorial Day, this place loads up from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And we just don't know what's going to happen here. It is in New Jersey, so we're still a hot spot. And as a matter of fact, with Jersey, it's interesting because Southern Jersey has become, as Northern Jersey's gotten past its peak, Southern Jersey's still kind of a hot spot, and we're in Southern Jersey. So there are people out there, and the places where I would walk, like on the boardwalk, which is a block from my house, it's closed.
Right.
The beaches are closed. The boardwalk's closed. So, I'm walking on streets, and you just try to keep your distance. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get into talking about activities with the group that you've been doing to try to keep everyone engaged and hopeful and, in business, that type of thing. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that, you were able to be kind of on the forefront of canceling your spring event, your in-person event, which I was, frankly relieved to see at the time that it happened, just because we were getting in that spell where there were decisions being made without a lot of information. We were hoping that we could get some stuff done. I ended up at an event that I didn't really want to be at, and was regretful the whole way home that I might be infecting my family because I've been around too many people. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but it was a tough thing probably in a leadership position to have to be, to decide I'm not going to have this event, deal with cancellation fees if there are any, different sponsorship dollars that you're losing, but the health of your membership obviously is the number one thing, right? So you had to do that, but you guys are working on the virtual thing at this point and keeping in touch. So tell me a little bit about how you're keeping in contact, what types of meetings you're having. You're breaking it down into smaller groups, or what are you doing to engage?
So I'll break down what we've done for the last, actually we had a vendor meeting last week, and we've had a variety of different meetings, but and in the vendor meeting last week, we actually put up a slide of how the progression has worked, what each week has brought. And by the way, thank you for that, noticing that we canceled early. Candidly, I'll give credit to Samsung, because when I saw that they canceled, I was actually in Chicago at that time, meeting with a lighting vendor, and I was at O'Hare waiting to come home, and that was March 4th. And it had just come out that Samsung was canceled for the following week. And I was at O'Hare, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these people, in small, and I'm saying, something doesn't feel right. So call it an old man's intuition, I guess. And at that point, I made the decision, when I get home, I'm grounding everybody and we're going to cancel. And we've handled all the situations with canceling, which has been challenging, but we've gotten past it. But what we've been doing, we started looking at it. We said, well, okay, 4 weeks ago, the first week was dealing with the shock of it all, that so many of our members were, in markets that they had stay-in-place orders had been instituted. And I think the first week was a shock. And what we needed to do was to communicate with these guys and just get an idea of their sentiments and allow them to vent and allow them to tell us where they are. And that's what we did. And we did that kind of, I think we had a couple of optional member principal meetings, Zoom meetings, and we allowed them to do that. The second week, we started to establish Zoom meetings. We continued with Zoom member principal meetings, and we started to talk about outbound messaging with regard to reaching out to clients and what to be saying to them. And we even scripted how to communicate with clients and it was very important that we didn't want to go out and sound like ambulance chasers. Right. And we just wanted to reach out and talk about their well-being. So we wanted to talk about, I'm sorry, let me step back. Second week was working on PPP and the SBA loans. That was all the vendor or the member principal meetings were all about PPP, comparing notes, who's doing what. We found out that applications varied from bank to bank. And certain banks, there were so many questions and so much stuff that was just people weren't aware of. And we worked through all of those things, and we gathered as much information as we possibly could, and we spoke to as many people as we could, and we communicated again. Third week was the reach out, which was a couple weeks ago, and what it sounds like. In addition to that, we met with many vendors who offered us either products or programs that would coincide with the reach outs that we were doing. An example is Sonance had a bundle, an outdoor bundle that we didn't have to make any human contact on. If we went out to clients and we offered it to them, and we had some really interesting concepts of how to present it, how to do it. We've had other outdoor vendors showing us things. We've had network vendors talking about upgrading clients' networks. And we talked about all these different opportunities that we had to reach out and how to connect with our clientele. As you know, we have regular relationship science curriculums that we've developed over the last year, with Keith Esterly. And Keith did a lot of this whole outbound messaging. And we've got as a matter of fact, this week we'll have an hour-long webinar from Keith. We've got 75 of our salespeople registered for it on Thursday to talk about here's what it looks like. We're continuing that level. Last week's in the week-long things, last week's was how are we going to go back to work? And what's this going to mean? As the peak, one of the things that we came up with during this whole process was to be looking at the peaks in various markets. The fluidity of this situation is that it varies from market to market. Metro New York started getting killed 4 weeks ago. These guys were out of business, whereby our guys in Phoenix, Arizona, was business as usual. Not, they didn't even feel it. Some of the more rural areas, they didn't feel it. So we have encouraged our members to watch the peaks on HealthData.org. I don't know if you've seen that website or not.
Yeah.
So we're able to look at by state where the peaks are and where we're going to start. Hopefully, if people observe the social distancing, we'll start to see the flattening of the curve, and it gives us an indication of when we may be able to tell our members, we think you're probably going to be going back to work. So, for instance, I spoke to a member this morning in Detroit, and it looks to me they're on the downside of the curve. I would think that governor's been really close on how she's allowing things to happen. But it looks to me that they'll probably be able to start getting guys back to work May 1st. So we're monitoring all these things. So back to your original question, we've just communicated the hell out of this stuff. We've reached out to our member principals. We've reached out to salespeople. We've had probably 10 salesperson focused. We call them roundtables, or some people call them town halls, whatever, roundtables. We've reached out to them and probably had a total of, I would say, maybe 150 to 200 salespeople on calls talking about strategies, allowing them to open up, share best practices. Obviously, we did the same thing with the member principals who've been through multiple things. And again, the fluidity of it changed from week to week. We have had technician happy hours on Friday evenings. When the ones that are allowed to work are getting back and they're sitting down in their house, had a tough week. And honestly, that's allowing them to vent. They're on the front lines. These guys are the heroes. These guys are the guys that are out there facing the customers, walking into customers' houses, and a client has somebody sitting on the couch coughing. How to handle those situations. What they're using for safety gear, right? Where they're getting masks, booties, gloves, hand sanitizers from. So in total, we've probably had over 50 different meetings.
Wow,
over the last
amazing.
4 weeks.
Before we continue our conversation with HTSA's Jon Robbins, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Residential Tech Talks. Today's episode is brought to you by ELK Products. Connected homes and businesses need smart control solutions focused on security. ELK's M1 security and automation controls provide the ideal combination of security, access control energy management, and integrated control solutions for comfort, convenience, and simplicity. Visit www.elkproducts.com to learn more.
Welcome back. We're talking with HTSA's Jon Robbins. Jon, as we were talking earlier about some of these specifics in different markets, are you able to put a number on a percentage of how many of your member companies are still working right now versus the ones that are just completely in kind of a pause mode because of their market and the level of the virus where they are? Their percentage on how many you'd say are not functional at this point, other than kind of just keeping it afloat?
I will tell you, I only know of our 89 members, I only know of one member company that is completely shut down.
Okay.
So that there's only one. Now, That said, there may be a few that only the principals are working right now, but the vast majorities have some level of service out there working as essential workers. It's very few that are completely shut down. Almost all of them are doing some level of work.
That's great to hear. I would imagine this is a great time for everyone to embrace the remote service opportunity and to really see that as a necessity going forward, because we're not going to be, this is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with off and on as before they get a, treatment for this virus. So it seems like going forward, everyone's going to want to figure out a way to make this remote in kind of opportunity happen for their service. Not only that, obviously new ways of going into the home, not only the booties like we've always done, but the masks and the gloves and everything just becoming kind of a status quo, right?
So new way of life. Yes. And actually that's been on my agenda also, is trying to find safety equipment that our members have the ability to go get it. We've put out surveys as to where members are getting things, but yes, it's going to be a new way of life, at least for a while.
Yeah, and so there has to be a slowdown of some sort, even though they are working. I would imagine that it's not the same a level of involvement in projects right now. Of course, depending on the market. If it's in Phoenix, maybe not so much a difference, but other places, right? They probably are not doing the same booming business that they had been doing, right?
Well, here's what's really interesting. When a lot of them got basically told that they can't work, they have a book a bit. We have seen it really remarkably enough, we have seen very few cancellations. We've seen postponements in projects.
Okay.
And what's happening is, as these guys are beginning to come back to work, they're telling us they have a solid 6 to 8 weeks of backlog of work. Now, to your point, they're going to do it in a little bit different way. They're going to do it with booties. They're going to do it with gloves. They're going to do it with masks. But they have most of our members have a solid 6 to 8 weeks of backlog of things that they've got to attack and get done. Where their concern has been is what happens when they've caught up to that 6 to 8 weeks, because that's the business that they would have been doing from clients that they are talking to now.
Yeah.
Right. And we've given them strategies for how to find that in 6 to 8 weeks, when you're afraid there's going to be a vacuum. Yeah. We've given them strategies for how to go get that business and think about hitting some singles. There's not going to be, after things happen, look, clients are going to want to upgrade. They've gotten used to the definition of home is a little different than it had been, right? Mm-hmm. Even 5 or 6 weeks ago, people are noticing, they're in their homes and they're noticing, geez, here's what I'm missing technologically. I got to get this done in case there is another, and there will be peaks and valleys. In case I get hit with this again, I want to make sure to have this taken care of. So we're telling our members how to reach out and how to plant that seed, because clients that, for instance, 6 weeks ago said, man, I don't need an expensive network. Why do I need a heavy? Well, they're finding out over the last 4 weeks why they need a good network in their homes, right?
For sure.
So we're talking to our members about hitting singles rather than just home runs, rather than just whale clients. Let's talk about those sets of clients that are going to want to have upgrade paths for their homes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as your face-to-face meetings, you're next scheduled to have an actual conference in the fall, as usual, right, in October. Are you optimistic? It's hard to predict the future, obviously, but are you hopeful that you're going to be able to do that?
I'm hopeful. I'm not optimistic.
Okay.
Is that a fair enough answer?
Absolutely.
I think that the level of travel that is going to happen certainly through the end of this year, until we know that we're well on our way, until we know that things have calmed down and we're well on our way to a vaccine, I think the level of travel is going to be really difficult. And even if we did have it, it would be hard to get attendees, understandably so. So I have hope. Look, there have been other epidemics that have kind of gone away. They've kind of petered out. I suppose that could happen. I'm trying to listen to the scientists.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm probably preparing, and I will begin to prepare with my staff, how we would do a virtual conference.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll be working on. Once we get that we know our members are back to work and everybody's kind of comfortable, then we'll start looking at what the fall conference might look like.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on a more personal note, everybody's talking about what shows they're getting caught up on at night since they're not traveling, or well, hopefully we're not working through the night, but we are on a lot of calls, and our schedules are probably fuller than they've ever been. But are you watching any series that you didn't have a chance to get to before, or Netflix or any other outlets?
So I like a lot of people early on, 4 weeks ago, jumped on Tiger
King,
which was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, insane. So I certainly was not obsessed with it. I just had to do it from a curiosity standpoint. I'm catching up on a lot of documentaries. Right now I'm on Prime, Amazon Prime. There's a documentary on New York by one of the Burns brothers, Ken Burns' brother, Chris Burns, and it's really terrific. So I'm trying to stay educated, but hopefully I won't have to do that when the weather breaks. I'll spend some time on my porch and that kind of thing. But that's the one that I'm engulfed in right now.
Yeah, I've gotten into these darker TV shows, like the one with Jason Bateman, Ozark.
Yeah, I tried to start watching it, and it's hard. It was too intense. Yeah, it was too intense.
It gives you a headache.
Yeah.
But as far as docs go on Amazon Prime, there's a bunch of these classic albums ones that they've got lined up on there. You'll find by accident every now and then, and
that's great.
Really cool ones.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I just watched one with Peter Gabriel, his So album, the one with all the hits on it. And it was just really interesting to see him, because I've always been curious about that guy. He's such a creative genius.
Well, actually, for the first time, and I remember when it first came out, and I kept telling myself I wanted to watch it, was Standing in the Shadows of Motown. And I finally got a chance to watch it like a week ago. It was tremendous. So.
They're great. Yeah, those backup singers. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take more of your time. I know you've got a lot to do. So thanks for sitting down for a minute and talking to us. And good luck with all your meetings and keeping in touch with everyone.
And I just want to wish everybody health. It did hit home here. My middle daughter was infected, and she was pretty sick for a couple of weeks. We've had 4 of our member principals have been infected. So this thing's real. It'll bring you to your knees for those who are symptomatic. And I just wish everybody health and safety, and this too will get to the other side.
Very good. Well, thanks again for your leadership out there and doing what you're doing and keeping in touch with us on it. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jeremy. Take care.
All right, you too, John. Take care. We really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us today on Residential Tech Talks. Have a great day.
Residential Tech Talks. Residential Tech Talks. Home automation, smart device, home or smart house.
residential tech talk vendor, lighting specialist to residential tech at Weve.
Home automation, smart device, home or smart home.